Hey everybody, here for Love and Hip Hop Season 5, Episode 10. Let's get right into it. So it starts off with Arian, D. Smith, and Betty. Arian is wanting to start singing again, and she's looking at D. Smith for guidance. And, she explains to D. Smith, excuse me, and Betty about auditioning for K. Michelle a couple of seasons back, but it didn't really feel right. And I mean, add that to the fact that she was sick when she did it. So, K. Michelle turned her down, but Betty is like, why would you even want to sing backup for her? She's crazy and all this other stuff. She's like, yeah, but Kay is still my friend at the end of the day. So, oh God, my daggone ponytail coming out. Whatever. So, she's like, it didn't feel right with Kay back in the day, but it feels right with D and Betty. So she basically stopped singing due to like familial issues and putting everybody before herself. So now she's like, I'm doing what makes me happy, and I'm taking care of me now. So she gets emotional about it. And D. Smith is like, well, I just can't wait to create something good with Arian. I have a good feeling about her as well. So now we get to Bambi, Tammy, and Deb. And they're discussing K. Michelle's party and the altercation with D. Smith and Betty. And, Deb is like, well, I didn't know all of this craziness was going on. So then Tammy is like, I had no problems with D. Smith and Betty. Betty started talking reckless, and that's when I went to a whole new level. But I was actually cool with Betty, but I just didn't like how she was coming at me. So Deb was like, she wants them to be at the No RIP panel, and as you know, we found out that No RIP stands for No Reckless Internet Posting. I think they said that on season 3, if I'm not mistaken. But it's basically it basically started after Deb's son committed suicide because of online bullying, and that's what a lot of people are doing now, committing suicide because of bullying. That's why bullying is such a big deal, now, and they're trying to stop people from bullying people, so that no more people commit suicide. So she really wants Tammy and Bambi to be panelists, but she also wants Betty and D. Smith to be panelists too, so that they can all hash out their issues, say how they feel, and use the platform, for good. So Tammy basically feels like it's pointless, but Deb is like trying to reassure her that it's actually a good idea. So now we get to Scrap and his son King, and they're doing a photo shoot at KK's warehouse, and KK is basically like, I'm glad Tierra came to her senses and let you spend time with your son. And she's like, you need to leave T and T alone, meaning Tierra and Tommy. And he's like, yeah, because when they get together, it's like an explosion. So, she's just like, I love my son and I'll do whatever it takes to make the situation work and to have, hold him down while he's away, take care of whatever needs to be taken care of, as far as King goes. So Scrap takes a few minutes to explain to his son, listen, I'm going away somewhere where babies are not allowed. I love you. I don't want you to think otherwise, because I do love you. It's just that daddy did something bad and daddy has to pay for what he did. So he's going away for a while. So, his son is sad because he sees his dad as his best friend. And he's 3, so he doesn't really necessarily understand what's going on. So his son is sad. He starts to cry, but he reassures him, I'll be back. I'll come home and we'll, it'll be like I never left. So we get to D. Smith and Deb, and Deb is trying to convince her and Betty to be a part of the panel as well. So Deb is like, I have no issues with D and Betty. I just want to form my own opinion of them. So D. Smith basically calls Tammy the Tasmanian devil because her and Betty got into it. She didn't have any beef with Tammy, but Tammy and Betty got into it and she didn't think it was right. So basically Deb is like, okay, well, you basically have a problem with Tammy because of something that Walker said. And she's like, yeah, I just feel like he has no respect for the LGBT community. And she's like, well, that's his opinion. So Deb pointed out and made a really valid point that Betty is a reflection. What Betty did is a reflection of D. Smith, as is what Flocka said. D. Smith took as a reflection. Well, not even so much as D. Smith. Betty took as a reflection of took what Waka said. Tammy is a reflection of that, and she's like, no, that's cute, but you tried it, and I'm like, no, that's a valid point because Betty is defending you because of what Waka said, and Tammy is Waka's wife, and y'all are taking y'all anger out towards Waka Flocka on Tammy, like Tammy is the one who said it, but y'all didn't like the fact that Tammy said that she has a daughter who doesn't understand what transgender is or whatever. And I mean, there's a lot of people out here who don't understand it. They don't understand the process. They don't understand why, but that's why they have these platforms to educate people, because there's a lot of people out here walking around ignorant and just thinking, oh, if you're transgender, you're just a man in a dress or a girl in some jeans, when it's more to it than that. So, this whole meeting with Deb and D. Smith went left, and she's like, I'm disappointed in you for you to have this panel and for you to have the attitude that you have right now is disappointing. So she got up and she left, and Deb just chucked it as a loss. So Mimi and Stevie meet up, and Mimi is very disturbed by the news she got about Stevie, and she discusses the info that Jocelyn has, and he's like, that girl is out of her mind. I don't have no babies. I only have 5 kids. That's it, and that's all. And she brought up Promise Be May, and Stevie is like, yeah, he never slept with her, and she's been running to the blogs just for attention. And he's like, the only reason why Jocelyn is even bringing up this whole baby thing is because she trying to take the heat off of herself for what she did to my clothes. And he was like, when he was in LA, Jocelyn came back and like basically vandalized all his stuff, bleached it, trashed it, everything. He showed her pictures, recordings, all of that. So she's like, well, if I find out that you got a baby or whatever, I'm gonna get to the bottom of it. So Stevie is like, don't believe everything you hear. So he was like, well, can I just crash here, And she lets him crash here. She's like, you need to get your stuff together. So, he lays on the couch and he on his phone. He's talking about daddy's home. I'm like, yeah, I'm glad you think so. So, KK throws this goodbye party for Scrap. Rashida, Stevie, Jock, Kirk, and all of them are there, as well as Sass. Just it's very family oriented. So Stevie is there and he's telling them about crashing with Mimi. And Rashida is like, this drama with Stevie and Jocelyn, Mimi does not need to get herself sucked into it. So when I get the chance, I'ma speak to her. So KK is basically making promises to Scrap, about holding down the fort, taking care of King, making sure everything is good. So she pulls him to the side and she asks him how he feeling. He's like, I'm nervous, but I know it's something that has to be done. I just want to get all of this over with and I want to enjoy myself. So, what else happened? Stevie basically said he will hold it down too and not tell Scrap about Tommy and her shenanigans, her wanting to work with him or whatever. So we get back to Arian, Mimi, D. Smith, and Betty. And she's telling Mimi about working with D. Smith. And Mimi is happy for her. She supports Arian. That's her best friend. So then Betty arrives, and Mimi is not really sure how to feel about Betty being there because she heard of the fight between Betty and Tammy. So D basically discusses her meeting with Deb, and she was like, yeah, everything was going good until basically she was like, what has my son done to you? So D. Smith's voice went from, nice and, petite and polite, girly voice to like this deep man voice. And when that happened, I kid you not, if y'all watch Catfish, y'all remember that episode of Catfish with the cousins? I think Antoine and Carmen or something like that. And Carmen revealed that she was Tony and she was playing her cousin because he called her a fat ass Kelly Price. And when Neve had asked her what kind of voice does she use, Neve or Max had asked her what kind of voice does she use when she talks on the phone, she's like, the Tony voice. That's what that moment reminded me of, because I'm like, dang, D. Smith came out of nowhere with a deep, like the man in, I don't want to say the man in her, but that deep voice is still there. So everybody is laughing, and whatnot. So Mimi is like, even though y'all had y'all falling out a little something, I think you should still do the panel to use that platform to have a voice and say how you feel. So Betty and Dee were against it at first, but then they're like, okay, it could be a good idea. It could work. So now we get to Scrap, Sass, King, and his nephews, and they're making salat, and salat in Islam is prayer. So they're making salat, that's what it's called. And they're just praying that, everything goes well, everybody's taken care of. So after the prayer, Scrap is nervous, and, Sass is sad that, Scrap may be taken away, but they knew that day would come. So, Scrap is basically telling him, while I'm going, stay out of trouble, stick to your music, stay positive, don't let nobody in these streets provoke you, just take care of yourself. So Sass is like, he has to be an example for his sons. Scrap is telling him, you got two boys looking up to you now. Be a positive role model. So Sass tells him, well, I'm going to hold down the fort, bro. I love you to death. I'm going to make sure all the kids is good. And I'm going to make sure, when how you left is how it's going to be when you come back. Everything is going to be good. So they hug and, they cry and they leave it at that. And it was like a touching moment to see that, Scrap is, he has all this support and love from his family and his friends. So now we get to the no RIP panel. Excuse me. Carly is there. Sabrina is a panelist, and they're discussing their experience with, bullying and whatnot. And she says how people was teasing her, calling her dykes and all of that. I don't know if they prefer to be called he or she or they or them, because I know there's preferred gender pronouns, so I'm not sure. But they were saying that their backstory is that they were teased, they were bullied growing up and whatnot. So Mama D is also a panelist, Bambi is also there, Tammy's a panelist, someone named Phil Hudson is a panelist, and they share that they're transgendered and they tried to commit suicide over 30 times. It basically became an addiction because they were just basically told that they should die, they should feel terrible for, living their truth. So Anthony Antoine McWilliams was also bullied, but they were bullied in a church for being, it's homophobia in the church, and they were told, you're not worthy, God does not love you, and Mama D is like, well, the Bible says, judge not lest you be judged. So for people to use that against you is, ridiculous. And you just live your truth, live your life the way you see fit, and love yourself. So she gave some good advice. D. Smith arrives with Betty. And Deb talks about her experience with being bullied on the internet after her son passed away. And they were basically saying because the fact that he committed suicide, Deb and them is affiliated with the Illuminati, basically saying that her son was a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice. So she basically, Tammy basically defends Waka, and she's like, yeah, my husband may not agree with what the transgender community does or whatever, but he never once disrespected the community. He basically, but he got backlash because of his opinion. And there's a difference between being disrespectful and between being disrespectful and having an opinion. And I'm like, I agree. And Waka has the right to his own opinion. Everybody has an opinion. It's not a problem. So when they opened the panel to the audience, D. Smith stood up and she basically gave Dev her props, and she's like, I'm happy that this is something that you're doing. And she's like, I just want people to take time to listen to, you know, transgenders and gays and bis and lesbians and all of that, instead of just writing us off as weird, crazy, and whatnot. Just take the time to listen. It makes all the difference. And you know, D is like, well, Tammy basically said, well, when everything happened, you know, I have a daughter. That's why my daughter is here. And to explain to her about the transgender community is kind of tough when we haven't even explained to her what the birds and the bees are yet. And D. Smith is like, well, that's the thing. Transgendered has nothing to do with sexuality. It has to do with your soul. It has to do with within. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense, but like, not a lot of people understand that. When people hear about the LGBT community, the first thing they think is who this person is sleeping with, when that's not the case at all. You know, transgendered and gay, bi, lesbian, it's just all, it's a preference, and it's all about living your truth. And that's where the misconception lies, because people think, oh, you know, they think it's just all carnal, when it's not. It's about people living their truth, people being their true selves. So it is about your soul, it is about what's within. So you know, D. Smith just basically feels like Waka is disrespectful, and she got fed up and she slammed her hand down, and she's like, but you know, he is living within the LGBT community. You know, it's something he has to deal with. So before it got too heavy and crazy, Deb put an end to it, and she's like, you know, I'm over it. I'm mad that it had to come down to this. It should have just been a regular discussion. Like, this is ridiculous. So D. Smith and Betty walked out. They didn't even argue. They walked out. They were just disappointed how the panel ended. So now we get to Scrap, and it's the morning of his sentencing. So he's just hoping for the best but expecting the worst, and in doing so, he has to cut his hair. I don't think he has to, but I think it was a choice he made. So he cut his hair off, shaved it down, and when he got to the courthouse, all of his family was there for support. His aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sister, everybody was there for support. They prayed around him, prayed for him, and he's basically like, listen, if nothing else, what I want people to take from my story is that when you make a mistake, you have to deal with the consequences of that mistake. And earning money the fast way is not legal, and it'll get you in a world of trouble. So, I mean, his story can help somebody out there, but I really do think it's crazy that they're thinking of sending him away for a lot of time just for marijuana trafficking. Like, but it's whatever. So it basically ended on that note. But this was like a really deep episode, you know, basically shining a light on the consequences of wanting to earn money the fast way, and also shining a light on the transgender community. So I'm glad that Mona Scott Young is bringing all of these issues to light. Like, people really just think that her putting this stuff on the show is just for ratings, but she's really getting messages out there. So I applaud her for that. As much backlash as she gets for these shows, she does have a lot of positive messages in it, and I just wish people would see it for that, as opposed to, oh, you know, people are watching this ratchetry, this, you know, this dumb stuff every week. No, there are like interesting backstories, and the people that are on these casts are relatable, and I wish people saw it that way. But whatever. But this was a pretty good episode. I enjoyed it. Please like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, and I will see you guys in the next video. Later.